Even though we are at the end of September, the readings that we just heard for this weekend would also fit in most appropriately during Lent. They challenge our values, they challenge our actions, they challenge our attitudes. They are like wake-up call readings, questioning us in our complacency and reminding us of our never-ending need for conversion. Today's story about Lazarus, not the one whom Jesus raised from the dead, but Lazarus the beggar. It talks about our need for ongoing conversion. For all of us living in America with our moderate middle-class wealth compared to some of those third world countries, listening to this reading can be very challenging. And to those who are hungry, who are poor, who are homeless, this reading can be a profound hope and consolation. Two things about this gospel I think are very important for us to remember. First of all, the context of this story. In Luke's gospel, the story of the rich man and Lazarus is one of those several important stories that Jesus shares with his disciples as he is on his way to Jerusalem to suffer and to die. He knows his time is close. And so Jesus shares these important messages with his disciples. He knows he has very little time, and he knows that his disciples, his followers, need to hear this important message. And so he shares these important messages during the last few days of his life on earth. We have listened to some of these beautiful stories in the past few weeks. Last week we heard about the shrewd manager, and we were invited to use all the resources that we have here on earth to secure a place in God's kingdom. A week before, we were told that we are all prodigals, sons and daughters, and God's mercy is endless. A week before that, we were told to renounce everything, to be true disciples of Jesus. A week before that, we were told we cannot serve both God and mammon. And today, we are told not to ignore the needs of the poor. That brings us to the second point. Sometimes we think that our greatest sins are sins of commission, our actions. But if you think seriously, the greatest sins sometimes are not actions, they can be our inaction. Sins of omission, we say. The rich man in this story that we just heard did not do anything bad. He was not punished because he did something bad. Instead, he was punished, condemned, because he did not do something good. While Lazarus was continually suffering, he did not take his time to care for Lazarus. He ignored him. And that left us to conclude that his sin of omission, inaction, was his biggest mistake. That leaves us to ask ourselves, could that be true of all of us too? Do we find a need and then ignore it? Do we see some problems, then pass over it, step over it? So it's a great point for our reflection this weekend. At the beginning of the Mass, I purposely invited all of us to say the Confiteor, I confess. And we ask God's pardon for the sins in my thoughts, in my words, in what I have done, and in what I have failed to do. In my 10 years here in this Archdiocese, I have been edified to see the generosity of the people whenever there is the need, be it money, donations, to relief services, to Catholic charities, to any other need, or donating food and clothes to the needy. Overwhelming generosity. People are very generous in sharing with those who are needy. And that's a very good way of sharing our blessings. But the challenge also for us today is in our fast-moving society, in our busy society, how much time are we taking to listen to others' stories? Rich man did not take any time to listen to the story of Lazarus. Why is he here at my gate? Is he an addict? Does he have drug addiction, or is he a drunkard? Why can't he work? Is he unable to work? Is he ill? Or is he simply lazy? He did not have any time to listen to the story of this man, Lazarus. He was simply too busy. And that can be our case too. Sometimes we find ourselves too busy and we don't take time to listen to others' stories, because God speaks to us through stories, through one another's stories. That's how God touches us. God speaks to us. There are Lazaruses in our own families, in our homes, whose stories we need to listen to. There are Lazaruses who want to share their stories and no one to talk to. So that would be our challenge for this week, to make a commitment to listen to someone's story and to find God, to find a Lazarus in our own family, in our community, or in our workplace, and to just find some time to listen to their story.